Welcome to a new episode of Sleep Journey Through Lost Worlds, your podcast for relaxing, letting go, and learning. Are you familiar with our other Sleep Journey series, such as Sleep Journey Through the Universe? Tonight, we ascend together to the sacred rock of Athens, to the Acropolis, that magnificent limestone plateau rising 150 meters above the ancient city below. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let yourself drift back 25 centuries to the golden age of classical Greece, when marble temples gleamed in the Mediterranean sun and the greatest minds of antiquity walked these sacred grounds. Picture yourself standing at the base of the Acropolis in the soft light of early morning. The air carries the scent of wild herbs, thyme and oregano growing among the rocks. Above you, the sheer cliffs of the sacred rock rise dramatically, their limestone faces glowing pale gold in the dawn light. This natural fortress has been inhabited for over 7,000 years, making it one of the oldest continuously occupied sites in Europe. Let your breathing slow as we begin our ascent. The path we follow has been walked by countless pilgrims, philosophers, artists, and ordinary citizens over millennia. Archaeological evidence shows that people lived on the Acropolis as early as the 4th millennium BCE during the Neolithic period. Bronze Age Mycenaean peoples fortified it around 1300 BCE, building massive walls and a palace complex. The word Acropolis itself comes from Greek words meaning highest city or city on the heights. The Acropolis served multiple functions throughout antiquity. It was a fortress, protecting the population during times of war. It was a royal residence during the Mycenaean period. But most importantly, it became the sacred center of Athens, home to the city's most important temples, and the focus of religious festivals that united the Athenian people. By the classical period in the 5th century BCE, the Acropolis had been transformed from a fortified palace into a sanctuary dedicated primarily to Athena, the patron goddess of Athens. As you climb the winding path, feel your muscles working gently, your breath coming a little faster. This physical effort connects you to every person who has made this sacred journey. The original entrance to the Acropolis was on the western side, where the slope is most gradual. Here stood the Propylaea, the monumental gateway designed by the architect Mnesicles and built between 437 and 432 BC. The Propylaea was no simple gate, but a magnificent marble structure with columns in both Doric and Ionic styles, creating a transition between the secular world below and the sacred realm above. As visitors passed through its columns, they moved from shadow into brilliant sunlight, a dramatic moment carefully orchestrated by the architect. The gateway contained a picture gallery, one of the first public art museums in history, where paintings on wooden panels depicted scenes from Greek mythology, and Athenian military victories. Take a deep, calming breath as we pass through the Propylaea. Notice how the ancient architects understood the psychology of sacred space, using architecture to prepare the mind and spirit for encounters with the divine. The journey to the gods should not be easy or immediate, but should involve transition, preparation, and mounting anticipation. To your right as you enter stands the small, elegant temple of Athena Nike, dedicated to Athena as the goddess of victory. This jewel-like structure, designed by the architect Callicrates and completed around 420 BCE, sits on a bastion overlooking the city below. The temple measures only 8 meters by 5 meters, but its perfect proportions and exquisite sculptural decoration make it one of the masterpieces of classical architecture. The temple's frieze depicts battle scenes, including the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE, where Athenian forces achieved an improbable victory over the invading Persian army. This temple celebrated not just divine victory, but human achievement, the triumph of democratic Athens over Persian despotism. Around the bastion ran a marble parapet decorated with relief sculptures showing Nike, the goddess of victory, in various poses. In one famous panel, Nike adjusts her sandal, a moment of quiet intimacy that humanizes the divine. Allow yourself to relax more deeply as we turn our attention to the Parthenon, the crown jewel of the Acropolis, and perhaps the most influential building in Western architectural history. Construction began in 447 BCE during the administration of Pericles, the statesman who led Athens during its golden age. The architects Iktinos and Kallikrates designed the temple, while the sculptor Phidias oversaw all sculptural decoration and created the massive statue of Athena that stood within. The Parthenon was built to house a colossal statue of Athena Parthenos, meaning Athena the Virgin, made of gold and ivory over a wooden core. The statue stood approximately 12 meters tall, and ancient sources tell us it required over 1,000 kilograms of gold. Athena was depicted standing, wearing an elaborate helmet decorated with sphinxes and griffins, holding a statue of Nike in her extended right hand, and resting her left hand on a shield decorated with scenes of mythological battles. The temple itself measures approximately 69 by 31 meters and originally had 46 columns forming a peristyle around the central chamber. These columns appear straight but actually employ subtle optical refinements called entasis. Each column swells slightly in the middle and tapers toward the top, creating an illusion of perfect straightness that compensates for the eye's tendency to see truly straight columns as slightly concave. The corner columns are slightly thicker than the others and lean imperceptibly inward, creating a sense of stability. Let your mind drift peacefully as we consider the mathematical precision employed in the Parthenon's design. The ratio of the width to length approximates the golden ratio, that mathematical relationship found throughout nature and believed by ancient Greeks to embody ideal beauty. No line in the entire building is perfectly straight or level. The stylobate, the platform on which the columns stand, curves upward slightly in the center to prevent the illusion of sagging. The entablature above the columns also curves correspondingly. These refinements required extraordinary mathematical calculation and stone-cutting precision. The sculptural program of the Parthenon represented the pinnacle of classical Greek art. The two pediments, the triangular spaces at each end of the roof, contained elaborate sculptural compositions. The east pediment showed the birth of Athena, who, according to myth, sprang fully formed and armed from the head of Zeus. The west pediment depicted the contest between Athena and Poseidon for patronage of Athens, which Athena won by giving the city the olive tree, more valuable than Poseidon's gift of a saltwater spring. Along the exterior, the metopes, square panels between the triglyphs of the Doric frieze, contained 92 sculptural reliefs depicting mythological battles. The south metopes showed the battle between Lapiths and centaurs, representing the triumph of civilization over barbarism. The west metopes depicted battles with Amazons, the east showed the war between gods and giants, and the north portrayed the fall of Troy. These myths served as metaphors for Athens' recent victories over Persia, the barbarian empire that had threatened Greek civilization. Most remarkable was the continuous Ionic frieze that ran around the top of the inner chamber wall, measuring 160 meters in length. This frieze depicted the Panathenaic procession, the great festival held every 4 years in honor of Athena. The procession shows Athenian citizens, cavalry, musicians, animals for sacrifice, and officials carrying the new peplus, a woven robe to be presented to Athena. This was the first time a Greek temple showed contemporary mortals rather than gods and heroes, elevating the Athenian citizenry to a quasi-divine status. Breathe slowly and deeply as we explore the Erechtheion, the second major temple on the Acropolis, located north of the Parthenon. Built between 421 and 406 BCE, the Erechtheion served multiple religious functions. It housed the ancient wooden statue of Athena Polias, believed to have fallen from heaven, which was older and more sacred than Phidias' golden statue in the Parthenon. The temple also encompassed several sacred sites, including the mark of Poseidon's trident, the sacred olive tree of Athena, and the tomb of the legendary king Cecrops. The Erechtheion's most famous feature is the porch of the Caryatids, where 6 sculpted female figures serve as columns supporting the roof. These maidens, each slightly different from the others, stand approximately 2¼ meters tall and wear draped peplos garments. Their hair is elaborately braided and piled on their heads, serving as the structural capital. Despite their function as architectural supports, the Caryatids appear relaxed and natural, one knee bent as if they might step forward at any moment. The architectural sophistication of the Erechtheion reflects the complex topography it had to accommodate. The building sits on multiple levels, adapting to the uneven bedrock of the Acropolis. The architects incorporated these natural irregularities into the design rather than leveling the site, showing a respect for the sacred landscape that contrasts with later architectural approaches. The irregular plan, with porches projecting in different directions, creates an asymmetrical composition that responds organically to its setting and functions. Allow yourself to sink deeper into relaxation as we consider what daily life was like on the Acropolis during the classical period. The Acropolis was not a museum, but a living religious center. Priests and priestesses maintained the temples, performing daily rituals of purification, offering sacrifices, and caring for the sacred objects housed within. The priestess of Acropolis held one of the most important religious offices in Athens, serving for life and living in a house on the north slope of the Acropolis. The Great Panathenea, celebrated every 4 years, was the most important festival in the Athenian calendar. The festival lasted several days and included athletic competitions, musical contests, and recitations of Homeric poetry. The climax was the procession depicted on the Parthenon frieze, when all Athens processed up to the Acropolis, bringing the new peplos woven by selected maidens. Young women carried ritual objects, men led animals for sacrifice, and cavalry displayed their horsemanship. At the Parthenon, a hecatomb, the sacrifice of 100 oxen, was performed, and the meat was distributed to all Athenian citizens, creating a communal feast that reinforced social bonds. Archaeological evidence reveals much about the construction techniques used to build these magnificent structures. The marble came from quarries on Mount Pentelicon, about 19 kilometers northeast of Athens. This fine-grained white marble contains small amounts of iron, giving it a warm golden glow when lit by sunlight. The marble gradually develops a thin golden-brown patina through weathering, enhancing this warm tone. Ancient quarrying techniques involved cutting slots into the rock face, inserting wooden wedges, and soaking them with water. Transporting these massive marble blocks required sophisticated engineering. Blocks weighing several tons were moved on wooden sledges, probably pulled by teams of oxen. Roads from the quarries to Athens were specially constructed and maintained. On the Acropolis itself, ramps and wooden cranes lifted blocks into position. Evidence of Lewis holes, rectangular cuttings on top of blocks where metal lifting devices were inserted, can still be seen on many stones. Let your body relax completely now, releasing any remaining tension. Feel yourself becoming lighter, floating through time, witnessing the Acropolis through different epochs of history. After the golden age of Pericles, Athens declined in power, but remained culturally influential. The Acropolis continued as a religious center through the Hellenistic period, when Athens was ruled by various Greek kingdoms, and through the Roman period, when Athens became a provincial city in a vast empire. Roman emperors admired Greek culture and became benefactors of Athens. The Emperor Augustus built a small temple to Roma and Augustus on the Acropolis. The Emperor Hadrian, in the 2nd century CE, was a particular Philhellene who sponsored building projects throughout Athens, though not on the Acropolis itself, respecting its classical perfection. Roman tourists visited Athens much as modern tourists do, admiring its monuments and taking copies of Greek sculptures back to Italy. With the rise of Christianity, the Acropolis underwent profound changes. In the 5th century CE, the Parthenon was converted into a Christian church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The statue of Athena was removed, probably destroyed, though its exact fate remains unknown. Interior walls were built within the Parthenon's columns to create a basilica, and the east end was reoriented to create an apse. Christian mosaics and frescoes covered the ancient sculptures, hiding but also preserving them beneath layers of plaster. Breathe deeply and peacefully as we move through the Byzantine period and into the Ottoman era. After the Ottoman conquest of Athens in 1458, the Parthenon became a mosque. A minaret was added, and Islamic religious practices replaced Christian ones. The Erechtheion became the residence of the Turkish commander. Despite these transformations, the buildings remain largely intact. The Ottomans recognized the monument's value and generally maintained them, albeit adapted to different religious purposes. Tragedy struck in 1687 during the Venetian siege of Athens. The Ottomans used the Parthenon as a gunpowder magazine, considering its thick walls and elevated position strategically valuable. On September 26th, a Venetian mortar shell struck the Parthenon, igniting the gunpowder and causing a massive explosion that destroyed the roof, the interior columns, and much of the long sides. The explosion killed approximately 300 people who had taken refuge inside. This single moment destroyed more than 2,000 years of preservation in seconds. Further damage occurred in the early 19th century when Thomas Bruce, Earl of Elgin, British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, removed approximately half of the surviving sculptures from the Parthenon, along with sculptures from the Erechtheion and other buildings. These sculptures, known as the Elgin marbles or Parthenon marbles, now reside in the British Museum, though Greece has long sought their return. The removal was controversial even at the time, with some arguing it preserved the sculptures from further damage, while others condemned it as cultural theft. Allow your mind to drift as we reflect on what the Acropolis represents in human cultural history. The monuments embody ideals that have profoundly influenced Western civilization. The pursuit of beauty through mathematical proportion, the belief that human achievement deserves celebration alongside divine power, and the conviction that architecture should elevate the human spirit. The Parthenon became a template imitated countless times, its proportions and details reproduced in government buildings, museums, and monuments worldwide. But the Acropolis represents more than architectural influence. It symbolizes the birth of democracy, rational philosophy, and scientific inquiry. In the city below the Acropolis, citizens gathered in the agora to debate and vote on laws. On the slopes of the Acropolis, in the theater of Dionysus, the great tragedies of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides were first performed, exploring eternal questions of justice, fate, and human nature. In nearby streets and public spaces, Socrates questioned citizens about virtue and knowledge, beginning the philosophical tradition that would transform human thought. The Athenians who built the Acropolis believed in arete, excellence in all endeavors, and kalokagathia, the unity of beauty and goodness. They strove to create buildings that were not merely functional, but beautiful. Not just beautiful, but mathematically perfect. Not just perfect, but imbued with meaning and sacred purpose. This holistic vision, integrating aesthetics, ethics, mathematics, and spirituality, offers lessons for our own time. Now let us pause for a moment of meditation and reflection. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, counting silently to 4. Hold that breath for a count of 4. Now release it slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. Let yourself drift now into peaceful sleep. Dream of marble columns glowing in Mediterranean sunlight, of philosophers discussing wisdom in shaded porticos, of ancient festivals and processions, of human creativity and achievement spanning millennia. Tomorrow when you wake, you will carry with you renewed appreciation for beauty, excellence, and the precious, fragile earth that makes all human achievement possible. Sleep well, dear traveler. May your rest be deep and your dreams be filled with ancient light and timeless wisdom. Good night.